Every morning I wake up at 5 a.m. It's not that I can't sleep. I've always slept well, even now at 63. I just love these quiet mornings when Hueytown is still asleep. I enjoy a cup of strong tea and get ready for the day. My store opens at 9 a.m., but I'm there by 8 a.m. to check the merchandise, look through new catalogs, and tidy up the display case. Robert and I opened Thorne's Reliable Appliances on Center Street 32 years ago, and I've never regretted it. Robert passed away suddenly 7 years ago from a heart attack. We were planning to travel after handing the store over to our son, but Lloyd was never interested in the family business. As a teenager, he didn't want to help with inventory. And after college, he moved to the city. He only came back to Hueytown after his father's death, and not for long. He said he felt suffocated here. However, when he lost his job at an insurance company 4 years ago, he suddenly remembered his hometown. He came with his new wife, Darcy, who seemed to see me as an obstacle from day one. I wiped down the counter and smiled at my reflection. In the polished microwave surface, wrinkles, gray hair, and a simple bun, but the eyes are still the same, bright and attentive. Robert always said my eyes were what attracted him the night we met. Your eyes see right through people, Freddie.
He'd laugh, and he was right.
I'm a good judge of character. Maybe that's why my store is still doing well. Even with 2 big electronic stores now in Hueytown, the bell above the door rings, and Martha Simpson enters. She's my first customer of the day and has been a loyal customer for 20 years.
Good.
Morning, Winifred. You're an early bird as usual, she smiles, adjusting her glasses. Good morning, Martha. What brings you in today? I trust your coffee machine is still going strong. Oh, it's still going strong. Best purchase I've made in years. But the toaster is starting to fail. Remember when I bought it from you? Goodness, do I remember? 12 years ago, I said. That's a long time for a toaster. Modern appliances usually don't last that long. Martha shakes her head. That's why I only come to you. You don't sell cheap stuff that will break in a year. You can recommend something reliable. I walk Martha over to the toaster stand, talking about the pros and cons of each model. It's not just a sales pitch. It's a conversation between 2 friends who trust each other. In big stores, salespeople just repeat specifications from catalogs. I know my products because I use them myself, testing every new model before I sell. After Martha leaves, the store slowly fills up with other customers. Even though it's Tuesday, not the busiest day of the week, by lunchtime I've sold 2 vacuum cleaners, a microwave, and a few small kitchen appliances. My strength is remembering what each customer bought last time and suggesting add-ons or replacements when the time comes. People appreciate that kind of attention, especially the elderly, who are often ignored in larger stores. At lunchtime, I close the store for an hour and go to a small cafe across the street. They have great soup and fresh bread, and best of all, the owner, Jenny, always has a table for me by the window where I can see the store entrance. Hi, Winnie. Jenny waves from behind the counter. Your table's free. It's pumpkin soup tonight. Your favorite. I nod gratefully and settle into my seat. I'm just about to unwrap my napkin when I see a familiar car pull up in front of the store. Lloyd's silver sedan. What does he want in the middle of the day? He usually only shows up on weekends when he needs money or free appliances. Lloyd pulls on the doorknob, realizes it's locked, and pulls out his phone. A few seconds later, my cell phone rings. Mom, where are you? The store's closed. I'm at lunch, Lloyd. The usual 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock. And you're really closing the store for an hour? How do you even survive with that approach to business? He sounds annoyed. Okay, I need to talk to you. Darcy and I will stop by tonight. I'll be home around 7 p.m. You can come over afterward. Mom, we can't accommodate your schedule. We have our own things to do. We'll be there at 6 p.m. Be home.
He hangs up before I can answer. It's always like this.
My time is worthless. And his is priceless. Jenny puts a bowl of soup in front of me and smiles understandingly. Did your son call? I can see it in your face. He's coming tonight, probably needs money again. Winnie, you're too good to him, especially after he sold his father's coin collection. I know, Jenny, but he's my only child. Jenny just sighs and Walks away to the other customers. She's right. I've forgiven Lloyd too much. I think back to a year ago when I discovered Robert's antique coin collection was missing. Lloyd swore he'd only taken them to show a coin expert, but I saw a check from an antique store that had accidentally fallen out of his jacket. Almost $5,000 for a collection that was worth 10 times that. And that's not the only incident. I returned to the store with a heavy heart. What does he want this time? The last conversation with Lloyd was 2 weeks ago when he came to borrow a steamer for Darcy. She stood behind the counter, looking at the expensive coffee machines, while Lloyd convinced me they would just borrow the steamer. I knew they wouldn't return it, just like they hadn't returned the blender, toaster, and a dozen other appliances borrowed over the years. This store is a relic of the past, Mom, Lloyd said then, lowering his voice. You need to think about the future. What's going to happen to you in 5 or 10 years? I think about it every day, son, I replied. And I see myself behind that counter. Stubbornness is an age thing, he sighed, as if he were talking to a cranky child. Darcy's right. You should consider a nursing home where professionals can take care of you. At that moment, Darcy turned toward us just as she heard her name. Her thin lips stretched into a fake smile. What are you two whispering about? Mom's senile quirks, Lloyd chuckled. She still thinks she'd be working until she's 100. Darcy gave the store a scornful glance. This appliance museum needs to close before it starts losing money. A space in such a nice neighborhood could be sold or rented out. It would be a smart financial move. I didn't say anything, even though I was seething inside. A museum? Losses? My store has brought in a steady income for 30 years. I know every figure in the ledgers, every market trend, but all they see in me is an old woman with quirks. The afternoons pass quietly. I go into the back room several times where I have a safe with documents. I check bank statements, reread the lease agreement. Everything's in order, but the feeling lingers. Lloyd's up to something, and I'm not going to like it. At 5 p.m. I close the store and drive home. A small one-story house in a quiet neighborhood, 15 minutes from the center. After Robert died, I sold our big house and bought this smaller one, putting the difference into the business and saving it for a rainy day. Lloyd was furious. He expected me to give him the money from the sale because I didn't need a house that big all by myself. As if the house belonged only to me and not to Robert, and I who had built it with our own hands. At home, I take a quick shower and prepare a light dinner of salad and baked fish. I always watch my diet, unlike Robert who loved fat and sweets. Maybe that's why I'm still active and full of energy despite my age. No pills, just vitamins and daily exercise. At 6 p.m. sharp. He's always punctual when he needs something. I hear a car pulling up. A minute later, the doorbell rings, even though my son has a key. Another petty disrespect to show that he is a stranger in this house. I open the door. Lloyd stands on the threshold, tall and balding, so much like Robert in his youth, but without his kindness and honesty. Behind him is Darcy, slender with perfect hair and manicure, but with cold eyes and a perpetually disgruntled expression. Hi, Mom. Lloyd kisses me on the cheek. His perfume is too pungent. We won't be long. We have dinner with friends at 8 o'clock. p.m. Come on in. I step aside. I'm just finishing dinner. Would you like some tea? No time for tea, Darcy says, walking into the living room and eyeing my old but comfortable chairs critically. We're having an important conversation. Lloyd gives his wife a warning glance. Darcy's right, Mother. We need to have a serious talk about your future. I'm listening, I said calmly, though I was growing anxious inside. Lloyd sits down across from me, leaning forward, taking my hands in his, a gesture he uses when he wants to appear sincere. Mom, Darcy and I are very worried about you. You're still working all day, lugging heavy boxes of equipment, doing the bookkeeping. It's a lot of work for a woman your age. I'm doing just fine, Lloyd. For now, yes. But what about a year from now? 2 years from now. Time spares no one, Mother. Darcy sighed impatiently. Winifred, you must think of the future. Your entire fortune is invested in this store. What if you fall ill? Who will run it? Who will pay your bills? I have health insurance and savings, I said, and I'm not going to get sick. No one is. Lloyd squeezes my hands again. But we have to be prepared for anything. That's why I'm proposing a power of attorney for me. I'll help you with finances, payments, taxes. You won't have to worry about a thing. That's it. Power of attorney. Access to all my accounts and assets. I'm very good with finances, son. I've always kept the store's books myself. That was back in the day, Mom. Now it's all automated computer programs, online banking. It's complicated for people of your generation. I've been using online banking for 10 years, I remind him. And I've been ordering stuff online myself. Darcy rolls her eyes. Winifred, you don't know what we're talking about. We want to protect you and your assets. There are so many scammers preying on the elderly these days. With power of attorney, Lloyd can monitor your accounts, review every transaction, and decide how to spend my money. I'm asking you straight up, Mom. Lloyd looks insulted. How can you think that? I'm your son. I only want to help. I look into his eyes. Once I'd seen the curiosity of a little boy helping his father fix toasters and radios. Now there's just cold calculation, but I know my son. If I turn him down outright, he'll find another way to get his hands on my money. Maybe I should take him up on it and see what he does next. I'll think about your offer, Lloyd, I finally say. Give me a few days. He's obviously unhappy that I didn't immediately agree, but he hides his irritation. Sure, Mom, think it over, but don't take too long. The sooner we get the paperwork done, the better I'll feel. Darcy glanced at her watch and rose. We have to go or we'll be late for dinner. Lloyd kissed my cheek again and whispered, It's for your own good, Mom. Trust me. I nod and close the door behind them. In the silence of the empty house, all I can hear is the ticking of the old clock. A gift from Robert for our 10th anniversary. He always said trust but verify. And I will see what they're really up to, my son and his greedy wife, and then I'll decide what to do next. For 3 days after Lloyd and Darcy's visit, I pondered their proposal. Every evening, sitting on the veranda with a cup of tea, I replayed our conversation in my head, analyzing every word, every gesture. Something was bothering me. My son's concern seemed contrived, too insistent. And Darcy, she didn't even try to hide her interest in my finances. On Thursday, after closing the store, I didn't go straight home but dropped in on an old family friend, Hugh Pearson, the layer who had handled our affairs when Robert was alive. Hugh was retired, but he made an exception for old clients. Power of attorney to handle all the finances, he frowned as he listened to me. Winnie, this is a big step. Are you sure you want to give Lloyd that kind of power? No, I'm not, I answered honestly. But I need to know what he'll do once he has access to my accounts. Hugh took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose tiredly. Don't you think it's too risky? If you don't trust your son, why give him control of your money? Because if I say no, he'll find another way. I'd rather know what he's planning. Classic Winifred. Hugh shook his head. Always wanting to be in control. All right, I'll help you. Draw up a limited power of attorney. It will give Lloyd access to your accounts, but with certain restrictions. For example, he can't withdraw or transfer more than $1,000 without your written consent. I've been thinking restrictions would make Lloyd wary. He'd realize I didn't trust him. No, Hugh, make a simple power of attorney. But, can you tell me how I can keep track of what he's doing? Hugh spent a long time explaining to me about bank alerts, online account monitoring, and other ways to keep an eye on things. I listened intently, memorizing every detail. When we finished, he looked at me with concern. Winnie, I've known you for almost 40 years. You've always been a smart and careful woman, but now you're playing with fire. Be prepared to get burned. I am ready, Hugh. Sometimes you have to take a risk to find out the truth. I called Lloyd that evening and told him I'd accepted the power of attorney. He was delighted. That's great, Mom. I'll bring the papers over tomorrow. You won't regret it. You'll see. The next day, Lloyd arrived at the store an hour before closing time.
He didn't bring Darcy. I guess he thought her presence might make me suspicious. That's smart.
I've got everything ready, he placed a folder of paperwork on the counter. I just need you to sign it. I've already consulted a lawyer and everything's in order. What lawyer? I asked, pretending I was just curious. Our corporate lawyer, the insurance companies. Lloyd answered casually. I flipped through the pages slowly, pretending to read carefully. In fact, thanks to Hugh, I already knew what should be in a properly drafted power of attorney. What exactly are you going to do with my finances? I asked, looking up from the papers. For starters, I'll analyze your expenses, optimize your payments. Maybe find better terms on your bank accounts, Lloyd said smoothly, like a business presentation. Then we'll see how we can increase the profitability of the store. Or, he paused, look at alternative uses for the premises. You mean selling or leasing? I asked directly. Mom, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Lloyd frowned slightly. We need to analyze everything thoroughly first. I nodded and continued to look through the documents. Finally, I picked up a pen and signed all the necessary pages. Lloyd immediately picked up the folder as if he was afraid I'd change my mind. Thank you, Mom. You made the right decision. He hugged me, and for a moment I thought I saw genuine concern in his eyes, but maybe it was just a play of light. I'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about bills, taxes, and other bureaucracy anymore. When he left, I closed the store and sat at the counter for a long time, looking at Robert's picture that stood next to the cash register. What would he say about my decision? Would he approve, or would he think it was reckless? You've always been a better judge of character than me, Freddie, I said, as if I could hear his voice. Trust your intuition. And my intuition was telling me to be on guard, thought the next day. I installed the bank's instant notification app on my phone for any account transactions. Hugh helped me set it up so Lloyd wouldn't know about the notifications. Now I could see his every move. For the first week, nothing happened. Lloyd called a few times asking about business, about my health, saying he was reviewing my financial records. I answered calmly, showing no suspicion. Saturday night, just as I was about to close up the store, Darcy came in alone, without Lloyd. Unusual for her. Winifred, I need some advice, she began with a fake smile. Lloyd wants to get me a kitchen appliance for my anniversary. What would you recommend? It all depends on what you need, Darcy. I tried to sound friendly. Maybe a multi-cooker or a good coffee machine. A coffee machine sounds tempting. Darcy walked over to the display case with the most expensive models. This one looks good. How much is it? $480, but it's worth it. Automatic frother, adjustable strength, the ability to use both ground coffee and beans. I'll take it, Darcy interrupted. Put it on Lloyd's tab. Darcy, if it's a gift from him, shouldn't he buy it? I asked cautiously. Oh, Winifred, Darcy laughed. What difference does it make? Lloyd manages your finances now, so your money is family money. Don't worry. He approved everything. I silently packed the coffee machine. This is the first test. If I refused, Darcy would complain to Lloyd, and he'd start asking questions about my trust in him. If I say yes, I set a precedent. All right, I said finally. I'll write it down as a gift from you and Lloyd. Darcy brightened. That's good. And, by the way, Lloyd and I were thinking, since you're trusting us with your finances, maybe you could give us a spare key to the store. Anything can happen, and we'll always be there to help. Now it made sense to me why she was really here. The coffee machine was just an excuse. I have Patty, I said, referring to the girl who sometimes filled in for me at the store. She has a key, and she lives 3 blocks away. But thanks for the offer. Darcy's face stiffened, and her smile became strained. Whatever you say, but think about it, Winifred. We're family. After she left, I called the bank and set up additional security on my account. Not just a password, but a code that came to my phone for large transactions. I didn't tell Lloyd about it. The power of attorney technically gave him the authority to handle the accounts, but it didn't change the bank's own security rules. As I drove home, I thought back to when Robert and I had started our business. Back then, in the early 90s, many people thought we were crazy to open a small appliance store when huge shopping centers were popping up all around us. Our advantage is our personalized approach, Robert said. We will know each customer by name, remember what he bought last time, offer exactly what he needs. And he was right. Our store survived when many of the big chains were closing. Even in the age of online shopping, we still had loyal customers who valued our advice and after-sale service. Robert died suddenly of a heart attack right in the store, among his favorite fixtures and tools. I was by his side trying CPR, but the doctor said he didn't have a chance. Aortic aneurysm. Instant death. After he died, a lot of people said I should sell the business. A woman your age needs to rest, not work 12 hours a day, they said. But the store was my whole life, Robert and I's brainchild. I couldn't just give it up. And now Lloyd and Darcy want to take it away from me under the guise of caring, under the guise of helping. But I'm not going down without a fight. At home, I went through all the latest bank statements, bills, tax returns. Everything was in perfect order. I've always been meticulous with my paperwork. Then I pulled out a folder with the deeds to the store and the house. I found out that Lloyd would need my signature to sell the commercial property or terminate the lease, even with a power of attorney. That calmed me down a bit. The next 2 weeks went relatively smoothly. Lloyd called regularly, asking about business, saying he was in the process of optimizing my accounts. I pretended not to suspect anything, though I knew he was looking into my finances, assessing how much money I had, where it was, how it could be used. One evening, when I was about to leave the store, the phone rang. It was the bank. A polite male voice said that there was an attempt to transfer a large sum of money from my account, and they needed my confirmation. What kind of transfer? I asked, feeling my heart start to beat faster. To Lloyd Thorne's account. $15,000. He has power of attorney to manage your finances, but we need your personal approval for such a large sum. $15. Exactly the amount I recently received from the sale of my old shop equipment. Did Mr. Thorne explain the purpose of the transfer? I asked as calmly as I could. He said he needed the money to remodel your store. Something about new windows and lighting? Remodeling? I didn't know anything about any remodeling plans. That was an outright lie. I did not authorize this transaction, I said firmly. Please block the transfer. Of course, Mrs. Thorne. We'll reject the transaction. Would you like us to contact Mr. Thorne and explain why? No, I'll talk to him myself. Thank you for calling. I hung up and just sat there staring into space for a few minutes. That's the first try. $15,000, not the entire amount in the account, but a significant portion. Enough to see if they could access my money. The phone rang again. This time it was Lloyd. Mom, what's going on? Why did the bank reject the transfer? What transfer, son? I decided to pretend I didn't know, for the remodeling of the store. I told you I wanted to update the interior, make it more modern. You didn't tell me any of that, Lloyd? My voice remained calm. And $15,000 is a lot of money for a makeover. Mom, I thought we agreed that I would manage your finances. That means making decisions that benefit your business. Managing, yes, but not spending such sums without my knowledge. Lloyd sighed, with feigned patience. Okay, next time I'll explain my plans in more detail, but this money is really necessary for the reconstruction. You want the store to look modern, don't you? I'll think about it, Lloyd, but next time please talk to me first about such a large expense. Of course, Mom. I'm sorry I didn't explain everything beforehand.
He said a quick goodbye and hung
up. I knew he was angry, but he was trying to hide it. And I also knew that he wasn't planning any remodeling of the store. The money was earmarked for something else. At home, I checked all the security settings on the bank accounts. I beefed up security wherever I could without drawing Lloyd's attention. Then I called Hugh and told him what had happened. Winnie, this is just the beginning, he warned. Now Lloyd knows he can't just take the money without your knowledge. He'll think of something else. I'll be ready, Hugh. Maybe we should revoke the power of attorney now that you know his true intentions. No, not yet. I want to see what he does next. After I spoke to Hugh, I couldn't sleep for a long time. I tossed and turned in bed, thinking about Lloyd, how he'd changed over the years. Once he had been a sweet boy who helped in the store, interested in how things worked, happy when he could fix broken appliances. What happened to that kid? When did he turn into this cold, calculating man who only sees his own mother as a source of money? Maybe it's my fault. Maybe Robert and I spoiled him too much, always gave him what he wanted, never said no. No, it's not just that. A lot of kids grow up well off, but they don't turn out like Lloyd. It's about the choices he made on his own. The choices he made every day of his adult life. After the incident with the attempted money transfer, Lloyd became more cautious. For a few weeks, he didn't take any suspicious actions, calling regularly, inquiring about the store's business, even stopping by a couple of times to check on things. I pretended to believe his explanations about the remodeling and our relationship. Outwardly returned to normal. One morning, I woke up with a headache. My blood pressure had spiked, as it had been lately. Nothing serious, but I decided to take the day off and rest. I called Patty, asked her to cover for me at the store, took a pill, and lay down. By noon, the pain was gone, and I decided to take a walk. Fresh air always helped me better than any medicine. Hueytown was a small town, and all the important places were in the center, a few blocks away from each other. I walked down the main street, nodding to people I knew, occasionally stopping to chat. As I passed the bank, I suddenly noticed a familiar car in the parking lot, a silver Lloyd sedan. Strange, Lloyd never went to the bank on weekdays. He worked as a consultant for an insurance company in a neighboring town and was usually busy. Into the evening. What was he doing here on a Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon? I paused in indecision. Should I come in? Or would it look like I was following him? But curiosity and anxiety took over. I pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped into the cool, air-conditioned air of the bank. It wasn't crowded inside. A couple of elderly customers at the counter. A young mom with a baby in the corner, filling out some paperwork, and at the far counter, Lloyd and Darcy were having a lively conversation with the manager. I quickly retreated behind a column, trying to remain unnoticed. I had a clear view from my seat, but they couldn't see me. Lloyd was saying something, gesturing vigorously. Darcy was nodding, and the manager, it was Peter Ellington, who had been serving me for years, was frowning and shaking his head. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I could tell by the gestures and facial expressions that there was a serious argument going on. Finally, Peter nodded reluctantly, pulled out some papers, and began to fill them out. Lloyd smiled victoriously at Darcy, and she squeezed his hand in return. After a few minutes, Peter got up and left for the back room. He returned with a large stack of bills, which he began to count, separating the stacks and taping them together with bank tape. Lloyd looked around nervously, and Darcy kept her eyes on the money, her hands tapping impatiently on the counter. I could feel my heart beating faster and faster. This is my money, they're taking my money. Peter finished recounting, wrote something down on the computer, then asked Lloyd to sign some papers. Darcy, meanwhile, was collecting wads of money and putting them into a large bag she held in her lap. Her face, usually indifferent or disgruntled, now glowed with eager delight. She even licked her lips as she accepted the last packet. I instinctively retreated farther behind the column when Lloyd and Darcy finally stood up and headed for the exit. Darcy clutched her bag tightly to her, and Lloyd, holding her under his elbow, hurriedly led the way to the door, still glancing around nervously. I waited until they were out and walked quickly over to Peter's counter. "Hello, Peter. Can I talk to you for a minute?" Peter flinched in surprise. "Mrs. Thorne?" "Yeah, I wasn't expecting to see you today." "I noticed," I replied dryly. "Tell me, was that my son and his wife, and did they withdraw money from my account?" Peter turned visibly pale. "Mrs. Thorne, I can't discuss client transactions." I'm a client, Peter, and this is my money we're talking about." "Your son has power of attorney," Peter reminded her. "He's legally authorized to handle your accounts." "How much, Peter?" I didn't back down. "How much did they withdraw?" Peter looked around, made sure no one could hear us, and said quietly, $75,000, almost your entire primary account. I felt my legs give out. $75,000, all of my savings from the last few years. Money set aside for a rainy day, for possible medical expenses, for store renovations. How could they withdraw that much without my consent? Don't they need my approval? For large transactions? Normally, yes. Peter looked guilty. But your son came in with a new notarized power of attorney. It specifically authorizes him to withdraw any amount without further authorization from you. And he presented a doctor's note stating that you have memory and decision-making problems. What? I couldn't believe my ears. That's a total lie. I don't have any memory problems. I understand, Mrs. Thorne, and I personally believe you. But the document looked authentic, stamped and signed by Dr. Harrison. Dr. Harrison is the therapist I've been seeing for the last 15 years. He knew perfectly well that I was of sound mind and good judgment. That document could only be a forgery. Peter, you've known me for so many years. Did you really believe that I was suddenly incapacitated? I tried to call you to confirm, Mrs. Thorne, honestly, but your son said you weren't feeling well and you were resting at home, that he was acting in your best interest, and he had all the documentation he needed. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I see, Peter. Thank you for the information. One more question. Do I have any other accounts, any savings? There's a restricted retirement account that can't be cashed out without serious penalties. And there's an escrow account that Mr. Thorne set up for you, your husband, not your son, years ago. There's about $20,000 in there. Your son doesn't seem to know about it since he hasn't mentioned it. Robert, even after his death, he continued to take care of me. That escrow account was our secret emergency money that only the two of us knew. Don't tell Lloyd about this account, please, I asked. And if he comes to withdraw money again, find a way to contact me directly. Okay, of course, Mrs. Thorne. I'm so sorry. If I had known... It's not your fault, Peter. It was my fault for trusting my son too much. As I left the bank, I didn't know what to do next. I was filled with anger, resentment, disappointment. How could Lloyd do this? Forge a medical report, defraud the bank, steal my money? I noticed their car was still parked in the parking lot, a little farther away from the entrance, so they must be close by. Without thinking, I walked down the street, peering into the windows of stores and cafes, and in the window of Marco's restaurant, I saw them. They were sitting at a table at the back of the room, still with the bag that now stood between them. I walked in and asked for a table near them behind a column. The waitress ushered me in and handed me a menu, but I declined, asking only for a cup of tea. I didn't care about food. I wanted to hear what they were saying. I couldn't see them well from my seat, but I could hear their voices clearly.
They
were talking animatedly, not caring much about being overheard. Perfect time to sell, Darcy said. Downtown real estate prices are at their peak right now. We'll get at least $400,000 for the storefront, maybe more. We'd have to get Mom to sign the deed first, Lloyd said. A power of attorney isn't enough. After Dr. Wilson examines her and confirms the diagnosis of early-stage dementia, we can arrange guardianship, and then we won't need any of her signatures. I almost dropped my cup. They're planning on declaring me incompetent. Guardianship? The important thing is that she doesn't suspect anything, Lloyd continued. Tomorrow I'll tell her I need the money to prepay the suppliers to update the stores. Inventory, she believe it. She always does when it comes to her precious store, and then we'll leave. Darcy's voice sounded impatient. I can't stay in this hole any longer, waiting so many years for your mother to finally make way. Darcy, be quiet, Lloyd urged her. As soon as we sell the store and get custody, we'll leave. I've already looked at a house in Florida on the coast. Warm climate, ocean, just like you wanted. What about her? Darcy asked without much interest. Son. Valley Nursing Home. I've already arranged for them to take her as soon as we get the paperwork done. Basic care is covered by her health insurance, and she won't have the money for more than that. And no remorse? Darcy snorted. She is your mother, after all. She always loved her store more than she loved me, Lloyd said, a lingering resentment in his voice. All I ever heard growing up was store, customers, business, even on weekends. All he and my father talked about was work. And now it was time to get what was due me. I sat there numb with shock and pain. Did Lloyd really think that Robert and I loved the store more than him? It wasn't true. We adored our boy, proud of his every accomplishment, supportive of his every endeavor. Yes, we worked hard, but for what? To provide him with a good education, opportunities we didn't have. When are we meeting Dr. Wilson? Darcy asked, bringing me back to reality. Friday. He's coming to my mom's house, ostensibly, for a routine checkup. Insurance covers home visits for elderly clients, and he'll confirm the diagnosis. For $20,000, he'll confirm anything, Lloyd grinned. Then we'll file the paperwork through the courts, and we'll be done in a month. We'll be basking on a beach in Florida, and Mom will be watching TV in the Sun Valley common room. I quietly paid and walked out of the restaurant without waiting for them to notice me. I felt dizzy and nauseous. As if in a fog, I reached my store. Patty looked at me in surprise. Mrs. Thorne, I thought you said you were resting today. Change of plans, Patty, thanks for filling in for me. I didn't sleep that night, but I wasn't weak anymore. I was angry and ready. The next morning, I called Hugh and told him everything. By evening, we had filed a petition in court to revoke the power of attorney, report the fraudulent doctor's note, and freeze any pending property transactions. Hugh arranged a meeting with the bank and the authorities. By the end of the week, Lloyd and Darcy were both under investigation for fraud. Dr. Wilson, too. Turns out he had a habit of diagnosing people for the right price. It didn't end quietly. Lloyd came banging at my door, yelling, pleading, swearing it was all a misunderstanding. I didn't open the door. Instead, I stood behind it and said calmly, "You had a choice, Lloyd, and you chose greed. My love for you was unconditional, but my trust had limits. You crossed them." He left, cursing. That was the last time I saw him. Weeks passed. I went back to my routine, my early mornings, my tea, my store, my customers. Word spread through Huey Town, and the community rallied behind me. Some customers even volunteered to help at the store. One Saturday, Jenny surprised me with a small celebration at the cafe, cake, flowers, and a sign that read, "To Winifred, reliable as ever." I looked around at the familiar faces, the warm smiles, and realized something important. Family isn't always blood. It's who shows up, who stands by you when it matters most. I returned to my store the next morning, unlocked the door, and smiled at my reflection in the microwave. I am 63. I'm not done yet. And this story, it's still mine to write.